This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 912, Succession, Songs, and Violence. Enjoy.
Worth mentioning with this, and I think it travels through for all of these, is that none of the puzzles here were, like, there was no light puzzle for this one. There was nothing that was, you need to really, like, think and write stuff down, and, like, this, like, you can. If you needed to, you absolutely could. But many, like, a 5x3 sliding puzzle, as opposed to most of the sliding puzzles in the game are a 5x5 with solid dots, this was a 3x3, and several of the boxes were larger than 1x1.
Yeah.
So you only had so many options of things to move at a given time. Same thing with, like, the hints. The glow is on the hints, and a number of the puzzles later where you have two options. You're carrying on two items at a time. Like, this is, simpler puzzles even than old quests like Recruitment Drive in some places. And it was really nice because it was still a great way to break up the dialogue and break up the, like, traveling around the world. They gave you a bunch of these things, and they did fast travel you to a bunch of places. So, like, it did flow pretty well, and it didn't feel overly cumbersome, at least to me at the time.
Yeah, and one thing we also do have to say with the puzzle here, the sliding puzzle in particular, if you reset the puzzle twice, you will be given an option to skip it.
Same, yeah, with any of these puzzles, same thing with the combat, right? Speaking of which, the combat in this section of the quest, I thought was really well done. They gave you a standardized set of equipment levels. Yeah. I'm assuming levels. Although I did see on the wiki that it did say if you didn't have 81 defense, you wouldn't have
barricade,
like that barricade available to you. Like, so it did. Like, I think you would have probably trouble with this fight if you had less than 55 in
right,
melee stats.
And that's the sense that you were saying, Tanis, is that from what you've seen and heard throughout this quest, is that the fighting seemed difficult in this part.
I think this was the hardest fight in the game. That fight against or not the game, but in the quest.
Okay.
I think that Vengeance quest required me to use quite a few of the defense abilities because it is a sword and shield fight.
Right, and come to think about it, I was effectively running a defense rotation on this between Reflect, Resonance, Debilitate,
right,
and whatnot.
You know what to do, but if somebody hadn't used those defense abilities, if they'd really enjoyed Slayer, they hadn't dug into that side of the game a whole lot, I think this fight would have been very, very challenging, close to impossible without a heavy defense rotation, because you couldn't use prayer, so you couldn't use devotion, which I think is the most commonly used defense. You had to be using reflect and debilitate and barricade and rejuvenation and in those. So,
and maybe this is the way forward for quest boss fights. Give us
standardized equipment.
Give us everybody a standardized slate, and then that way, then what you're cooking up, and that it's not going to be a cakewalk for people who
it's true. We've been saying quest bosses are too easy.
Yeah, but on the other hand, quest bosses at some point in time can be too hard, accessibility-wise. Tanis, Final Fight of Extinction, right?
Yeah, I mean, we just put they can make it as hard as they want, as long as you can let me skip it eventually.
That's a serious thing. Cool. Is it fair to let people skip it, but also...
Right.
Yeah. This is story. This is not giving you big, crazy rewards. This is not like... That's the point of it, isn't to be challenging combat. I do kind of miss being forced to throw myself at, Tokar Hawk or, any of the Nomad 50 times in a row. But I think it's not, again, modern game design-wise, making the content more accessible seems like a fair choice. Although, just to push back, it feels a little dirty to me to have the option, but also I did clear it on my first run through. So maybe, right, like it's not supposed to be that challenging. Or, I mean, it's not, for people who are intimately familiar with the combat system, it's not supposed to be all that challenging. And for people that haven't put that much time into it, or like for whatever reason it's not accessible to them, still being able to access the content is an awesome thing, right? And I think that that's the core principle of that design. And I don't want to say, we should make everything hard.
Right.
No, that's definitely not the right design decision. So
yeah,
I think one of the differences with this is you take people like myself that are just going to be like hard nosed straight out, just like nope, ain't doing that.
Not for me.
And it at least moves them to a maybe. You know, like it gives options, and when you think about
Right.
a quest, the quest serves a very small amount of people to begin with,
Yeah.
and you really
Yeah.
don't want to spend that much time and money and development to serve very few people.
I mean, I think a
So
lot of people are going to be playing through this. It's 110k XP potentially. I mean, in
I
something like it's not a small reward. Like, it is worth
yeah,
the
but
time.
110k
Oh,
XP.
God.
I mean, if this is like week one fresh start, okay, but in the main game,
Yeah, at level 60 and 40, like if your average levels are average level 50, that is doubling your level in something.
You know
Like
what?
100k
Hang
XP is
on.
level 50. So like, it's not nothing. Like, I would do
Yeah.
this on a lower level account. I
For the
think it's
combat.
going to be done. It is the new storyline. It is
Yep.
self-contained. People have seen the previous quest. I think this is something that, like, RuneScape
Yep.
is an RPG. It is a story-based game. I think a lot of people do play the quests. I mean,
Yeah.
the compers
And-
all
and-
have to, and there's a lot of them in the game, let's be honest, at this point.
And we need to see if the next
Like-
storyline is going to start with a clean break or not. Because if it doesn't, then more people are going to need to do this quest.
I think it probably will. I think that's what they seem to be
Yeah,
hinting
and
at.
and you know
going
the whole thing about this, and this is the point I have to say about combat. A funny thing on this. First things first. When I was in the Vengeance boss fight, I finished the boss fight by onslaughting the Magister, and I almost killed myself doing that.
I forgot you could onslaught. Wow, that's extra, Shane. I'm proud of you.
But
Talk about things people don't have unlocked. Okay.
But the question I have is that, you know, you take these quest designers, Mod Raven, Mod Stu, Mod Zura, and you ask them, with what you learned from Succession, would you design a boss fight differently, say, in the Nomad quests, or in Slisuke's Endgame, or in Extinction?
Man, seems like the answer is yes, or maybe they're just trying it out. Either way, I enjoyed that fight.
Yeah, and, you know I see nothing wrong with letting people skip it, because if it gets more people doing quests, then that's something I'm for, 100% of the way there.
Amen.
So
Also makes it accessible to the level 3 skillers, because again, reminder,
yes,
this quest opens up movement abilities for skill, specifically for skill purists, and because it has no combat level requirements for it or any of its prerequisites. Although you do have to kill 144 demons, but you could do that, I think, in a way that doesn't gain you XP. I don't do this.
lesser demons.
So, lesser demons, there we go, to unlock Dive, which is probably worth it for people. So, you know, food for thought of, like, your level 3 skill pures can't do this combat, probably, right? Like, again, I don't know how you deal damage without getting combat XP. I know there's ways to do it.
Poison bombs.
But since... Okay, right, so no, you can't, because you can't bring those with you. So,
right.
Brings
you
a
have to skip
recoil.
it.
You can't.
Yeah, same
That's
thing.
how they do it back in the
You
day.
can't.
You can't bring anything with you for this. So, got it. Yeah. So that's it. It makes it accessible to those people as well, which cool. I don't know how many are left, but there's a few.
And overall, what we have here is just the evolution of combat, dare I say it, in the modern quest, from what we saw in Daughter of Chaos to what we have here now in Succession. And if it gets more people playing quests at the end of the day, that's a wonderful thing for this. You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.